but it's, again, it just tells the story of it's the evil and the ugliness of people's hearts these days is everywhere.
This is Franky Rose's Think Tank. Here's your host, Franky Rose.
Hey guys, welcome to the Think Tank. So we're going to talk about Karen Read today. I've been doing a little bit of digging and ooh la la, what is going on? So I do have a document that we're going to go through. It's pretty long, but it gives us a lot of great information. So before I do that, I just want to talk briefly about missing. There's 3 missing men in Colorado in the mountains, which is extremely unusual. If you live in mountains, you get to know patterns. This is unusual. So I'm not sure if there's foul play happening here, but 70-year-old Thomas Ray Velasquez. So he is missing, and they say that he, let's see here. It says they took out his 2020 Polish Ranger and was reported missing on January 6th. We also have John Milken, who's 75. He has dementia. So he left on Thursday at about 7:45. He was not dressed for the weather, and he has gone missing. We also have Henry David Twitchell, who on January 4th has been missing. It says that his vehicle slid off Highway 13 in Rio Blanc County. He was not present. It sounds like he left his vehicle, and there has been nothing from then either. So keep your eyes out for that. Don't forget, hit that bell, because I'm not sure exactly what time that's going to happen, but I am going to do something fast on them. I'm just trying to hear. There's something going on with Twitter. Oh, there we go. Hello, Twitter. We got you. So we're going to talk about a few different things with Karen Read. There's been a bit of a battle between what seems Jennifer Coffendorfer and a guy named that goes by Turtle Boy. They both have Maybell Junction. They both have separate opinions, and it just sounds like an ish show. So that's going on. There's a lot of talk about cover-ups in this case, being that John was a cop. I don't know. It has to be looked into pretty good, because I'm finding things that just don't make sense to me. Is there a cover-up? Could be. I mean, that would not be an unusual thing based on what we've learned, right? So we will do that. And then we're going to go through a timeline of this, the happenings the night that this happened, and then we'll go to the document. So it could be a fairly long live, but the information that is in this document is overwhelming. So let's take a look here. This is the sun. Why have we got garments? Not sure. We don't want them. Close. Let me try something. Okay, how do we do there? All right. Okay, denying accusations. So this is back from September. But like I said, this does give us a good um, overview. So Karen Read is 42 from Massachusetts. Her parents are William and Janet Read. And she started dating John O'Keefe back in 2019, just before Corona hit. Janet Reed said about the couple, they just seem to be in a happy place. So what is Karen accused of? She's accused of deleting John O'Keefe following a night at the bar. She's been charged with second-degree M. Police claim Reed ran over O'Keefe with her SUV while dropping him off at a house party in Canton, Mass. It's pretty bizarre. According to ABC News, prosecutors allege that she had left him to pass away during a snowstorm and that the couple had gotten into an argument earlier that day. Boy. Reed and her defense team have denied the allegations against her, maintaining that she was not involved in John O'Keefe's death. In an interview with ABC News, Matt Gutman, Reed said, "I did not delete John O'Keefe. I have never harmed a hair on John O'Keefe's head." The outlet reported that on the night of O'Keefe's passing, the couple ran into Boston officer Brian Albert at the Waterfall Bar. Okay, now remembering that John O'Keefe was a cop. I don't think that that's mentioned so far, but John O'Keefe was a cop. So let's see here. Reed claims that John O'Keefe told her that they were invited back to Albert's house. Her defense attorney claimed that O'Keefe was attacked inside the home before he was dumped outside. She and her attorneys allege that there has been a cover-up involving state and local police. The prosecution has denied those claims, telling ABC News there was no conspiracy or cover-up. Such claims have been systematically refuted by evidence submitted to the Norfolk Superior Court. According to CBS News, Reed spoke out on the courthouse steps saying, "We know who did it. We know. We know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know. I tried to save his life. I tried to save his life at 6 a.m. I was covered in the red stuff. I was the only one trying to save his life." Her attorney, Alan Jackson, added, "And no, she didn't do it. This is an innocent woman." Reed has a court hearing, on September 15th. Okay, that's previous. John O'Keefe was a Boston police officer who, per NBC Boston, passed away on January 29th, 2022. CBC News reported his body was found in a snow pile outside of Albert's home. Per Boston 25 News, he was pronounced dead at the Good Samaritan Hospital in Brockton, Massachusetts. It's reported that the cause of death was blunt force trauma, hypothermia, according to the chief medical examiner. So the thing is, with this case, there's a lot of things actually with this case. There is alleged bite marks on John O'Keefe. So how and where was he able to get bite marks on his arm? They're saying that this was caused by a vehicle, but I'm going to show you really quick. There is an officer, you'll see, who was on another channel, and he is very well educated when it comes to he trains dogs. He's been doing it for years. He is perfectly aware of what dog bites look like. He trains. So this is a dummy arm I'm going to show you that they put on people who are training their dogs to be police dogs. So these are showing dog bites. It's not the best picture. There's better ones, but look at this. Bite, pull, bite, pull. Very, very similar to bite, pull. Now, he would tell you that the long ones are the top canine, which is what he said quite common. And every once in a while, you'll get the third one in the middle caused by a lower canine. He said, looking at this, like I said, there are better pictures. I'll see if I can find more. Bite, pull, bite, pull, bite, pull. That very much looks like what we're seeing here. It's just my personal opinion. I mean, everybody's going to have an opinion, right? So we're going to take a look at the timeline. Okay. So we're just going to skip down here. Okay, so this is timeline of events according to the prosecution. While names of several individuals related to the case were used without. Okay, do you know what? It's determined. So let's listen to this real fast, and then we'll get into that timeline.
Expecting Karen Read to appear here at Norfolk Superior Court later this afternoon. Read is the Mansfield woman accused of backing into and killing her boyfriend, off-duty Boston police officer John O'Keefe, during a snowstorm in January of 2022. O'Keefe's body was found in a snowbank the next morning outside the Canton home he was.
So again, they're saying that there's a cover-up here, that Karen Read is innocent, and that basically this cover-up goes throughout the department and possibly further.
Visiting. Last month, Read said in court filings that the charges were a, quote, sinister cover-up to help the real perpetrators, the officer who owned that home and his relative. Now the DA is rebutting those accusations. So again, this happened at that other cop's house when they were invited to go there. The defense's most explosive claim is that a relative used her cell phone to search, quote, how long to die in cold, some 3.5 hours before O'Keefe's body was discovered, suggesting that she knew O'Keefe had been left outside to die. But the DA... Well, that's interesting, isn't it? I didn't hear that. But DA says the defense is just misreading the cell phone data here, that the search was not conducted until after O'Keefe's body was found, and it was Read herself who asked for that search. News Center 5 will have a camera in the courtroom later today. That hearing is set for 2 o'clock. Okay. Okay, now let's take a look at the timeline. Oh, let me see here. Yeah, where is Chloe? That's a really good question. So Chloe is, let me see here. Chloe is Chloe Gate, the dog that was in the home that they're saying caused these injuries. I don't know about you guys, but those are looking like dog bites. I mean, everyone's going to have, let me see here. Those are dog bites. I don't know what anyone says. Garrett Wing should testify at the trial. Oh, hell yes. So he is the dog, oh, I was going to say whisperer. He's the dog trainer for the cops, I do believe he's got a company, and maybe, I mean, I'm trying to get some footage. I'm waiting for permission, and it's an interview with Garrett Wing. So he just has been doing this for, I think he said something like 30 years. And his dad was also a cop who was a dog handler. So if anything, I truly believe more than even a coroner, this guy has seen way more dog bites and probably would be a better expert witness. I'm not sure how a vehicle causes that unless you get drug underneath it somehow. But then if you get drug underneath it, you get road rash.
You don't get 3 scrapes, you get road rash. Well, hello, Shauna. Yeah, and that's the thing. Where is Chloe? We've heard so many different things for everything from her being put down to her being placed in another home because she had possibly, allegedly bit somebody else. I want to know where that dog got rehomed. Yes, if indeed it did. I don't know why this is top secret, but that's how they're treating it. Alrighty, so approximately 1 week before O'Keefe's passing, O'Keefe's niece said that the couple had a fight. She heard the victim tell the defendant that their relationship had run its course and that it wasn't healthy. January 28, 2022 at 7:37 p.m. O'Keefe is seen on a surveillance camera arriving at C.F. McCarthy's in Canton. 8:51, Read is seen on the video arriving at C.F. McCarthy's. 8:58 p.m., bartender hands Read a glass containing clear liquid with a lime in it. 9:15, bartender hands Read another glass. 9:20, bartender hands Read another glass. At 9:33, bartender hands Read another glass. At 9:57, bartender hands Read another glass and a shot glass with clear liquid in it. Wow, that's how I drink, man. Used to drink. 10,000, good Lord, Martha. 10:22 p.m., bartender hands Read another glass. 10:40, video shows Read and O'Keefe leaving the bar. Read is seen holding her drink in her right hand as they exit. 10:54 p.m., O'Keefe and Read are seen on a video arriving at the Waterfall Bar and Grill in Canton together. January 29th, 2022. Read exits the establishment with 2 women through the front door. O'Keefe exits moments later after taking a sip from his glass and carrying the drink out of his hand. Dandy, dogs don't cause death, they cause injuries. How many bites does a coroner see? This is the thing. I think that he would be a way better expert. He knows, this is what he's dealt with is pretty much his entire life through his dad growing up and then his own experiences as a dog handler when he was a cop. Yeah, I wish they would be specific about what was in the glass and who it was for. Exactly. She could have been grabbing beers or whatever for someone else. I agree, Maxie. Okay, let's see here. At 12:11, video shows O'Keefe carrying the glass, meeting up with Read. The two walk together towards Washington Street. 12:14 a.m. O'Keefe sends a text asking a friend where to. He receives a text with an address on Fairview Road from the sister of the homeowner. 12:14 a.m. O'Keefe sends a text asking a friend where to. We did that. 12:15 a.m. Vehicle consistent with Read's SUV seen on a video traveling past the Canton Town Library. 12:17 a.m. Large black SUV is seen on video traveling past Temple Beth Abram towards the intersection of Washington and Dedham Street. 12:18 a.m. O'Keefe calls to ask for more specific directions. 12:31 a.m. The homeowner's sister sends O'Keefe a text message saying, hello. 12:40 a.m. She sends another message saying, pull up behind me, referencing her vehicle in the driveway. She said that she subsequently watched the black SUV move from its initial place where it had stopped near the driveway to the far left side of the property near a flagpole and fire hydrant where The body was subsequently found. 12:45 a.m. She sends another message, hello, and then observed the SUV drive away. Between 1:30 and 2:30 a.m., another guest at the Fairview Road home gets a ride home and indicates that thought she saw something she described as a dark object in the snow by the flagpole, but could not determine what it was. At 4:53 a.m., the sister of the Fairview Road, why don't they give us his name? Homeowner receives a call from Reed, who is looking for O'Keefe. She instructed O'Keefe's niece to place the call. She tells Reed the last time she saw O'Keefe at the waterfall bar and saw them leaving together. Hey, Douglas, good to see you, friend. Very good to see you. Interesting case, guys. Shauna. Okay, so 5 a.m., Reed calls a second friend stating that O'Keefe did not come home and she was worried. According to the prosecution, Reed also told wonder if he's gone. It's snowing. He got hit by a plow. Now that's a strange statement. 5:11 a.m., library surveillance video captures a large SUV, black SUV, turning onto Washington Street towards the waterfall. 5:15 a.m., the same camera captures the SUV traveling in the opposite direction towards the temple. 5:18 a.m., a camera at the temple captures the SUV passing. At 5:30 a.m., Reed and a friend arrive at the home of the sister on Fairview Road, where she is described as hysterical. One of the women drove Reed back to O'Keefe's house while the other followed her in her own vehicle. During that drive, she told investigators, Reed said, could I have hit him? Did I hit him? And told her about the cracked taillight on the SUV. At O'Keefe's house, Reed showed the other woman the cracked taillight. All three women then got back into the same car and went to look for O'Keefe. The friend who was driving said it was snowing heavily with poor visibility. When they arrived, but she noted that Reed immediately, she said, saw the victim when the other women could not see it lying in the snow. 6:04 a.m., a 911 call from a woman reporting a man, later identified as O'Keefe, was found in the snow. The first Canton police officer to arrive saw three women waving at him from the front yard near a flagpole and fire hydrant. Two of the women were performing CPR on the victim. The officer observed the victim was cold to the touch and not breathing. Footage from a camera attached to the police officer's cruiser shows blizzard conditions. A Canton firefighter who responded to the 911 call said she witnessed Reed telling her friend repeatedly, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. 7:50 a.m., O'Keefe is declared deceased. 9:08 a.m., Reed's blood is drawn at the Good Samaritan Medical Center. A forensic toxicologist said it revealed her blood alcohol content was 0.07 or 0.08, and opined that around the time of 12:45 a.m., her BAC would have been between 13 and 29. So I don't know, guys. Okay, I don't know. 4:30 p.m., Massachusetts State Police troopers arrive at Reed's parents and observe her black Lexus SUV parked outside the garage door with a shattered taillight. Okay, so on January 31st, 2022, the autopsy is conducted by the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. The doctor opined that the extensive injuries to his head likely rendered Mr. O'Keefe incapacitated. The doctor further opined that upon viewing O'Keefe's injuries and her examination, she observed no signs of Mr. O'Keefe being involved in any type of physical altercation or fight. Interesting. February 1st, 2022, members of the Massachusetts State Police Crime Scene Service section examined Read's SUV and conduct tests, including a confirmation that the car's backup camera was functioning and alerted the technicians when it was approaching a dummy. A forensic scientist also found human hair on the rear of the vehicle. Troopers reviewed surveillance footage from SF McCarthy's and Waterfall Bar and Grill. February 2nd and 3rd, 2022, troopers obtained surveillance video from various Canton institutions along the routes traversed by individuals involved in the case. February 22nd, 2022, investigators interview O'Keefe's niece and nephew. So that is what the state is putting out there right now. There's also, now this, I'm not going to bring it up, but it is something that we're going to keep in mind. So this is of December 5th, 2023 from, let's see, who is this? 25 News. And it says Norfolk DA calls federal probe over Karen Read case an extraordinary step. So yeah, the feds are looking into this case now because there's been so much doubt and so much said about this case. You know, there is a lot of doubt. I don't know what the hell happened, but I honestly think there's a hell of a lot more to this story than what we're hearing. Can you guys see that okay? Okay, let's see, guys. Yeah, there's a few things that are kind of, I don't know, passed over possibly. I'm not thinking she did it on purpose, if at all, in my opinion. Oh, Douglas, this is a rabbit hole because we're looking at possible corruption again in another cop shop. It's just unreal. The feds are now looking into this case due to what's been said. And honestly, I don't have enough information in my own brain yet about this case to make, I can't say that I 1000% believe that she's innocent, but holy crow, it's sure getting close. So Karen Read is accused of deleting her off-duty boyfriend. Yeah, and he was an off-duty cop. Yeah. I know, Dandy. It's pretty damn hard to believe that just by watching some of the videos that I've seen. You guys check out, I was a guest on the Alternate Corner, and we both streamed it, so it is in the playlist. But take a look at some of that footage when we're done here and tell me what you think. Why would she go look if she knew where he was at? Absolutely. It makes no sense that she would go back to the spot. It makes absolutely no sense in my mind. It just doesn't, does it? Nothing makes sense because she's innocent. Yeah. Yeah, she went back. She allegedly dropped him off to go to this house party. And she went back in the morning when she couldn't find him. She went back to the house, and this is when they allegedly found her. Unless something happened inside the home and he got out and succumb to his injuries right outside the house. Yeah, that is an absolute possibility. Absolute. So who was in that home? Another cop. That's another cop's house. I can't remember his name. We'll get that. Yeah, they will. They will. Okay, so yeah. His knuckles look like he was in a fist fight between the men in the home would warrant an attack. Chloe bit two other people after John's passing. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at this document. We will take breaks because it is a big one. Commonwealth versus Karen Read. So this is a Commonwealth's memorandum in opposition to the defendant's motion pursuant to Rule 17 of Criminal Code Procedures, directed to Brian Albert, Verizon, and AT&T. I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Mexi. I'll put that back up for a minute because it is worth a link, a look, you guys. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so here we are. Here we go. Now comes the Commonwealth and respectfully request this honorable deny the defendant's Rule 17A2 motion for order directed to Brian Albert. The defendant's motion should be denied. Furthermore, the portion of the defendant's motion addressed to the production of Mr. Albert's cellular phone should be, I think it was Mr. Albert's house they were in, should be more appropriately be framed as a motion for reconsideration, whereas the same motion was previously heard and denied by this court. Regardless, this motion should be denied because the defendant has failed to demonstrate that the requested cellular phone is evidentiary and relevant to the applications and is not made in good faith, but rather a fishing expedition for evidence of a purported conspiracy among these witnesses, supported merely by speculation and conjecture. But you know, that's what they're going on. Do you guys, I mean, really? It's, boy. Okay, so I am going to do this for a minute because that's what I was trying to do. So yes, it very much sounds like two cops had a fight and one passed from a fight. Yes, and I also think there's a really good possibility that their dog Chloe got at him as well, because there's no way anyone is going to convince me that these marks are from getting drugged from a vehicle or backed over. No, 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 no. Not going to talk me into it. So that night in the house, there were many. So, okay, Brian and Nicole, Chris Albert and Julie Albert, Colin Albert, sisters. So I do believe these are all the players or most of the players. We'll get to know them a little bit better. But this is the house that they were in, and right where we're looking is where John O'Keefe was found that night. I don't know, guys. They also redecorated the basement. They ripped all the carpets out. They did all sorts of things right after this happened and got rid of the dog. So there's so much to this, guys. It's like, what? This is supposed to be tried. Let me get the date again. It's in March. I really would like to cover this. If you guys find the date before me, feel free to post it. March 12th. This trial's supposed to start. And this is a trial because there's corruption involved or alleged corruption involved. I think that we need to see this trial. Yeah, very, very much possible. Well, the coroner said hypothermia. Yeah, good question. I am not finding the autopsy. I'm looking. Nope, those are not abrasions, those are lacerations. Yeah, I'm not finding it, friend. If anyone finds it, feel free to send it to me on Discord or Twitter. Yeah, good chance Dandy being drunk went outside and froze after a fight. Yeah, I mean, his knuckles were beat up. Even his knuckles. Like, what? Yeah, there's so much to this case, guys. Yeah, that's what they're saying, Shauna. No one knew. Okay, here we go. On January 29th, 2022, at approximately 6:04 a.m., the Canton Police Department received a 911 call from a woman reporting a male party, subsequently identified as the victim John O'Keefe, found outside in the snow at 34 Fairview Road. Okay, right there, but we have also got right there, guys. This is where. Okay, so at the time of the 911 call, there was an active blizzard occurring in the heavy snow and the temperature in the teens. Officers Saraf and Mullany, both of the Canton, Mullany, I'm thinking, both of the Canton Police Department were dispatched to the scene along with Canton Fire and EMS officers. EMS Officer Sarif was the first officer to arrive on the scene, where he observed three females waving at him from the front yard area of the residence. Officer Saraf's cruiser camera footage was viewed by the grand jury in this matter and admitted it as grand jury exhibit number 56. The footage depicts the weather and visibility conditions during the officer's transit and arrival to the scene shortly after the body of the victim was discovered and the 911 call was placed. In a video, Officer Saraf can be seen utilizing the spotlight attached to the driver's side of his cruiser as he attempts to locate the calling parties in the darkness of the blizzard conditions. Looking at the residence of 34 Fairview Road from the street, the three females were in the left corner of the property in the area of the flagpole and the hydrant. Officer Saraf observed the victim lying on the ground as two females were performing CPR on him. Three females on the scene were identified as the defendant, Karen Reed, Jennifer McCabe, and Carrie Roberts. Officer Saraf further observed the victim to be cold to the touch and not breathing. His return to the cruiser to retrieve his AED device, however, at this time, Canton Fire and EMS arrived on the scene and took over the resuscitative efforts. Paramedics transported Mr. O'Keefe to the Good Samaritan Medical Center in Brockton, where he was subsequently determined to be deceased by Dr. Justin Rice hours later. Hours later. Okay, Lieutenant Paul Gallagher Detective Sergeant Michael Lank and Sergeant Sean Good, also of the Canton Police, arrived on scene moments after the 911 call had been received. Following the victim's transport from the scene, they began to search for any evidence where O'Keefe had been discovered in the mounds of the snow in front of the lawn adjacent to the roadway. So again, they're looking right in here to see what they can find. And that's them. I'll leave that up for a moment. So following the victim's transport to the scene, they began to search for the evidence. They located a broken cocktail glass and multiple patches of red that seemed to be DNA in the vicinity of where the body had been located. The Canton officers secured the glass and 6 blood samples from the snow as evidence. Later that morning, the Massachusetts State Police unit at the Norfolk District Attorney's Office was notified and responded to the scene as well. Trooper Michael Proctor and Sergeant Yuri Buchanek were among the troopers who responded and began interviewing the witnesses. So they first spoke with Miss McCabe. Miss McCabe indicated she and some friends were all at the Waterfall Bar and Grill during the evening of January 28th. She and her husband, Matthew, she arrived with her husband, Matthew, at approximately 9 p.m. following one of their children's high school basketball games earlier in the evening. At approximately 11 p.m., Mr. O'Keefe and Miss Reed arrived at the waterfall together. Miss McCabe stated that Mr. O'Keefe and Miss Reed had been in a dating relationship for approximately 2 years, and that Miss Reed stayed at O'Keefe's house most nights. Miss McCabe observed, Miss McCabe observed Miss Reed walking into the bar holding a cup from C.F. McCarthy's with a clear liquid inside. She believed to be vodka soda drink. Miss Reed had entered the waterfall with a glass inside her coat. I remember those days. Once upon a time. Mr. O'Keefe and Miss Reed had been at C.F. McCarthy's, a bar across the street from the waterfall, prior to coming to the waterfall. Miss McCabe observed Mr. O'Keefe to be wearing a baseball hat, jeans, and sneakers. She stated that the defendant and the victim appeared to be in a good mood and did not observe any arguing between the two. Through the course of the evening, she further described the atmosphere within the bar as friendly, with no arguments amongst any of the patrons. She described a group and the atmosphere within the bar had been, within the bar and between the defendant and the victim was consistent with each of the witnesses present that the trooper interviewed throughout the course of their investigation. As the bar closed, everyone with their group was invited back to 34 Fairview Road, the residence of Miss McCabe's sister, Nicole Albert, and her husband, Brian. She observed Mr. O'Keefe and Miss Reed to leave the waterfall together. That is the question, Shauna. That is the question. And yeah, was she murdered inside the place and placed in the, and then placed in the snow? That's what they're saying. That's what the other side are saying. Let's see here. I'm just going back. No, not that we're aware of. There's just her calling him and not getting answers. Where he is found, same side of the house, possibly beyond the property line. Does that look like a place you would drop someone off for a party? Well, not to me. Not to me. If she was to run him over herself, I would think he would be found closer to the home unless he got out and started walking away from her down the street and she ran him over. She would need to get room to get moving fast enough to cause that. Yeah. Not saying she did it, just trying to make scenarios. Absolutely. Otherwise, you just fall and be very mad. Yeah, there's so many questions to this. There's so many questions. As Miss McCabe was arriving at her vehicle, she received a text message from Mr. O'Keefe asking where to at 12:14 a.m. Miss McCabe replied with the address of 34 Fairview Road at 12:18. Mr. O'Keefe called Miss McCabe to ask more specifically where the house was located in Fairview. While inside the residence following her arrival there, Miss McCabe observed a black SUV consistent with Miss Reed's vehicle, a 2021 black Lexus SUV, arrive in front of the residence. From her vantage point at the front door of the home, Miss McCabe texts Mr. O'Keefe at 12:31 stating, "Hello," and again at 12:40, "Pull up behind me," referencing her vehicle parked in the spot within the driveway of the home, located on the right side of the property. If looking at the resident from the street, Miss McCabe then observed the black SUV move from its initial place where it had stopped near the street, near the driveway, and proceeded to the left side of the property where Mr. O'Keefe's body was subsequently discovered later in the morning at 12:45 a.m. Miss McCabe texted Mr. O'Keefe again, saying hello, and then observed the black SUV drive away from the home. At approximately 4:53 a.m., Miss McCabe stated she received a phone call from Miss Reed looking for Mr. O'Keefe. The phone call was placed by the victim's juvenile niece, and the defendant's direction to Miss McCabe's cellular phone. Miss McCabe answered the call from the victim's niece, spoke briefly to her, and the niece then handed the phone to the defendant. The defendant sounded distraught over the phone and drove to Miss McCabe's home. The defendant told Miss McCabe that she last remembered seeing the victim at the Waterfall Bar. Miss McCabe then informed the defendant that she observed the defendant and the victim leave the bar together. Miss McCabe also later informed the defendant she had seen them at Miss Reed's vehicle in front of the home on Fairview. The defendant informed Miss McCabe that she and the victim had gotten into an argument the last time she had seen him. The defendant arrived at Miss McCabe's home around 5:30 a.m. Shortly after the defendant arrived at Miss McCabe's home, Miss Carrie Roberts arrived there as well, as she had also received phone calls from the defendant that early morning looking for the victim. Miss McCabe then drove Miss Reed's vehicle from the house back to Mr. O'Keefe's house, as she was too hysterical, and Miss Roberts followed along in her own vehicle. While driving to Mr. O'Keefe's house, the defendant stated to Miss McCabe, "Could I have hit him? Did I hit him?" Miss McCabe stated the defendant also told about a cracked taillight on her vehicle. Once they arrived at the victim's home, the defendant had Miss McCabe look at the cracked taillight, which Miss McCabe described as the passenger side right rear taillight, as cracked and missing a piece. Miss McCabe then and the defendant then entered Miss Roberts' vehicle to go looking for the victim. The defendant was seated within the passenger side while Miss Roberts drove, and Miss McCabe was seated at the front passenger seat. Miss McCabe stated that they turned onto Fairview Road from Chapman Street. At the time, it was snowing heavily with the wind blowing, creating poor visibility. Miss McCabe stated that just prior to 34 Fairview, there is a cluster of trees, and immediately the defendant stated that she saw the victim. Okay. This statement initially confused Miss McCabe and Miss Roberts as they were unable to see Mr. O'Keefe lying in the snow. Miss McCabe stated that the defendant screamed to open the door and ran directly over to the body near the cluster of trees and laid on top of him for warmth and began CPR. Miss McCabe stated that the victim was lying on his back, covered with approximately 6 inches of snow. With his phone on the ground underneath him, the defendant yelled at Miss McCabe twice to Google, "How long do you have left outside before you pass from hypothermia," or something to that effect. On January 29th, the troopers interviewed Mr. Matthew McCabe separately from his wife. Mr. McCabe indicated that he has known Mr. O'Keefe for approximately 8 years and had met Miss Reed a handful of times. He stated, maybe was this at a cop's house? I thought it was. He stated that he was at the Waterfall Bar on Sunday. And sorry, guys. Okay, on Saturday night, and observed the victim and the defendant enter together. He observed the victim to be wearing a baseball hat with a curved visor. Miss Reed to be drinking a clear liquid, possibly vodka. Mr. McCabe stated that he left the bar last from his group and was heading to his in-laws' home at 34 Fairview Road. He entered his vehicle with his wife, Jennifer, who was on the phone with the victim, telling him how to get to 34 while at the Fairview residence. He observed a large SUV pull up in front of the house on the street. He had been looking out the front, open front door. Through the glass storm door, he described the SUV's positioning as initially parked in front of the house. Mr. McCabe looked out at the window some minutes later and observed the same vehicle had moved towards the left side of the property. Minutes following that, he observed the same vehicle driving down Fairview, leading the same direction it had been facing while parked. Troopers also interviewed the homeowner of 34 Fairview Road, Brian and Nicole Albert. Both confirmed that they had been at the Waterfall Bar and the previous evening with family and friends and had left around closing and returned to their home. Throughout the evening, they both indicated that the victim and the defendant, neither of whom they knew particularly well, entered the bar and joined their group. They indicated that several people from the group had arrived and had been invited back to their home after the bar. Several people from the group and several arrived, staying for approximately an hour. Both indicated in their sworn statement for the grand jury in this matter that their nephew, Colin Albert, while present at the home upon their arrival, had left their home well before any of the guests arrived from the waterfall. Several other witnesses called for the grand jury similarly confirmed this. Neither were aware that the defendant and the victim had been planning on coming over, although they would have had no issue if they had been aware. Neither heard nor saw anything outside their home over the course of the morning until Miss McCabe had awakened them. Prior to Miss McCabe entering their home and waking them up in their bedroom, Miss McCabe's cellular phone, which was downloaded by members of the Massachusetts State Police, followed by her signed consent, shows phone calls from Miss McCabe's phone and both Nicole and Brian Albert's phones. The first call to Nicole Albert occurs at 6:07:42, and while listed as answered, lasts for a duration of 9 seconds. The second call to Nicole Albert occurs at 6:08:17, and while also listed as answered, lasted for 7 seconds. The call to Brian Albert occurs at 6:23 and is listed as unanswered. Troopers also interviewed Mr. Ryan Nagel, Mr. Nagel's sister Julie, who had been at 34 Fairview the evening of January 28th, visiting the Albert's son for his birthday. Mr. Nagel stated that he had been contacted by his sister after asking for a ride home. His friend drove with Mr. Nagel in the front passenger seat and his girlfriend in the rear cab of his friend's Ford F-150 truck to Fairview. As the truck was driving down Cedar Crest Road, it observed a set of headlights of a mid-sized black SUV coming from the opposite direction of Cedar Crest, and the truck he was traveling in yielded to the SUV, making a right turn onto Fairview, and then followed behind it after executing its left turn onto Fairview. Mr. Nagel stated that the truck stopped directly in front of the driveway to the home and remembered the SUV stopping right along the right-hand curb toward the left side of the property. He remained within the truck while his sister exited from the home and asked them to come inside. He declined the invitation, and his sister eventually decided to stay at the home and would make other transportation arrangements. As his sister returned to the house, Mr. Nagel observed the black SUV pull up approximately 1 to 1.5 car lengths to the far left edge of the property's home, where the flagpole was located along some bushes. He stated that he observed as the rear brake lights were illuminated throughout his observations, to include the third top center light. Mr. Nagel reported hearing no noises coming from the interior of the SUV. Nagel indicated that his friend pulled away from the side of the road. When they were leaving, they drove past the SUV. He observed the interior light on within the vehicle and a Caucasian female operator sitting inside the vehicle holding the steering wheel at 10 and 2, staring straight ahead of her. How do you remember where her hands were placed? Well, that's good. My eyes need a break. Makes me sleepy reading these long things. I don't know what that is. I start to go, oh, might need more coffee. Oh, Tony, our American is here. Good day. This is a case where the husband-boyfriend offed himself? No. This one is the one where his girlfriend is accused of running over her boyfriend, who was a cop. Oh, that's it. There are so many. This one's going to start this case on March 12th. So we'll see how this case that we're working on right now goes. And if we can get the Jennifer Dulos wrapped up, then I'll probably, along with many others, stream this as well. It is very interesting. This is a case where the girlfriend of an officer is being accused of deleting. And this is that's what I heard. Turtle Boy got arrested for allegedly doing something that's involving this case. Now, he's the one, I'm not sure. Some people call him a journalist. Some people call him a blogger. I haven't looked into the guy, but I think you can find him on YouTube. Yes, I got it. Snowy blizzard day, and I think it was, yeah, that's basically what one side is saying. One side is saying this happened inside of the house, and there was also a dog involved, and the law enforcement is saying that she did this. Look him up he's also on Twitter. If you guys have Twitter, check him out there. And do you know what? That is the thing. He is very much, I've heard, like JLR, but this guy got himself into some legal trouble outside of this case. I'm not quite sure what that's all about. I know that I've heard that Turtle Boy and Jennifer Coppendoffer, there's like ish going on. There's a lot of people out there voicing their opinions. Oh, you guys, I'm going to need more caffeine. I can see it happening. Okay. So troopers also later interviewed Mr. Nagel's sister, Miss Juliana Nagel, as well as her friend, Miss Sarah Livingston, both of whom had been present at the home on Fairview on January 28th and 29th, and both of whom had been given a ride home by the McCabe's. Both indicated that they had been at the home at Fairview for Brian Albert Jr.'s birthday on that evening. Both provided a list of other individuals that were there. Both indicated that the Alberts, Brian and Nicole, arrived later in the evening from the waterfall and listed those in a group to include the Alberts and the McCabe's and Mr. Higgins. Both indicated that no one else entered the home while they were there, and they left and got a ride home from the McCabe's. Miss Livingston recalls Miss McCabe saying that someone else was coming. However, that person never arrived. Juliana Nagel stated that she had called her brother Ryan for a ride home at approximately midnight. While waiting for her to drive her home, she was looking out the kitchen window and observed an SUV stop by the mailbox, with the front of the SUV facing Chapman Street. She stated that she further observed the SUV traveling along the front of the house and stopped between the mailboxes and flagpole, where it came to a stop. So there's a few people that have totally different stories. So it's, like I said, it's very interesting to me. She went outside to speak with her brother and noticed that it was lightly snowing at that time. Her brother declined her offer to come inside, and she indicated to him that she would arrange an alternative way home. She went back inside the home with the SUV still parked in the aforementioned position. Miss Nagel stated that she left the residence in McCabe's vehicle sometime between 1:30 and 2, with Mr. McCabe driving. Mr. McCabe in the front passenger seat, her behind the driver's seat, and Miss Livingston next to her husband behind Miss McCabe. Miss McCabe reversed out of the driveway and they traveled past the house. Miss Nagel indicated that she thought she saw something she described as a dark object in the snow by the flagpole, but could not determine what it was. Ooh, 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 ooh. Later that day, January 29th, Trooper Matthew Dunn and David, okay, to whom? Dicko? Dicasio? That just, okay, Dicasio? How about we say David D. interviewed Miss Carrie Roberts. Miss Roberts stated to them that at approximately 5 a.m. she received a call from the defendant stating that John did not come home. It was snowing and she was worried. The defendant further stated to Miss Roberts, John's unalived. Carrie, I wonder if he's unalive. It's snowing. He got hit by a plow. Miss Roberts got dressed, left in her vehicle, eventually meeting the defendant at Miss McCabe's home. where she observed the defendant to be hysterical. Miss Roberts stated that she believed the defendant was still intoxicated in the morning and had told her that she did not remember last night. Miss Roberts reported the defendant as stating, "I was so drunk I don't even remember going to your sister's last night," referring to Miss McCabe's sister. The homeowner of 34 Fairview Road, Miss Roberts followed the defendant's black Lexus SUV back to Mr. O'Keefe's house. They went inside the home for a period of time looking for him to no avail and checking the victim's niece. While at the victim's home, Miss Roberts stated the defendant had told her and Miss McCabe about a cracked rear passenger taillight that showed both of them the area on her vehicle. Miss Roberts then drove her vehicle with Miss McCabe in the front passenger seat and the defendant in the rear passenger side to the 34 Fairview Road home. So we'll take another look at that house. So right there, this is where with the flagpole and the fire hydrant they're saying that's where he was found. And you can see the two bays for the garage, so I don't know, guys. They're saying he didn't make it into the house. And we're saying possibly he had to have. How did he end up in that position? I'm just taking a boo. You guys. Okay, so Roberts drove her vehicle. She and Miss McCabe were scanning the sides of the roadway along the drive, looking for the victim, while the defendant periodically screamed and texted on her phone as they drove. Miss Roberts described the weather as a whiteout condition as they were driving around. As they arrived in the area of 34 Fairview, Miss Roberts stated that the defendant screamed, "There he is, I see him," from inside the vehicle and screamed to be let out. Even after initially exiting the vehicle, Miss Roberts stated that she could not see the victim in the conditions and further stated that his body was covered in snow. She stated that the victim's body approximately 12 feet from the roadway. So why would he be 12 feet from the roadway if he got ran over? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Did he get up and walk and just lay down in the snow? Because if she backed over him, he would be where he lied, right? He'd be where that happened. So why is he 12 feet in? She observed him to have a swollen right eye with a laceration above it, DNA around his nose and mouth. Miss Roberts stated that they immediately began CPR and Miss McCabe called 911. Miss Roberts stated that she observed the victim to be lying on his back with his arms by his side. Now what? That's not the way things go either, is it? No. She noticed that it's okay. When the paramedics arrived and lifted the victim onto the stretcher, Miss Roberts observed the grass underneath the victim's back, not covered in snow as the remainder of the area was. The defendant repeatedly asked Miss Roberts, Miss McCabe, and the officers and the paramedics on the scene if he was unalive, repeating the phraseology numerous times to each. The defendant further grabbed Miss Robertson by the arm at one point and asked her if they were really working on John or was he already passed. In addition, Trooper Buchanek interviewed Nicholas and Karina oh, good Lord, Karina K. Both were present when the group at the waterfall in the evening were present with the group at the waterfall in the evening of January 28th when they arrived there at approximately 9 to 9:30, respectively, as they came in separate cars following their daughter's high school basketball game. They had known the victim for approximately 5 or 6 years and had met the defendant a handful of times. They stated that the victim and the defendant arrived at Waterfall together at approximately 11 p.m., arriving from C.F. McCarthy across the street. Miss Kolokithis spoke for, I'm sorry if I'm getting this stuff wrong. These funky last names, I have a problem with them. I apologize. Okay, so Miss Kolokithis spoke for a period of time with the defendant and observed her to be drinking vodka soda cocktails while at the bar. She also recalled the defendant pushing quite a bit for a member of the group, Christopher Albert, the owner of the local pizza shop, to go across the street after leaving the bar and to keep partying while they made pies for everyone. When it was time to leave, Miss Kolokithis indicated that she walked outside with Miss McCabe and observed the victim and the defendant to walk out together and proceed to the left of the driveway and up Washington Street, where their vehicle was parked along the curb, facing back up towards Miss Waterfall. Towards the waterfall. Miss Kolokithis indicated their vehicle was also parked along Washington Street, but further down and facing the opposite direction from there, she observed the defendant walking towards the driver's side of the door of the black Lexus SUV. She further indicated that during the course of her conversation that evening with the defendant complained about the victim's mother and lack of private time for the couple that the couple had had for vacations because the children and activities had been their activities and responsibilities. She also described her as a fine and did not believe the defendant to be overly intoxicated. So, I mean, again, everybody's having different opinions when they talk about this. Some people are saying she was bombed. Other people are saying she was fine. They were saying she was drinking a white liquid. Okay, I mean, a lot of times that is vodka, right? A lot of us have drank vodka at one point or another. How intoxicated she was, I don't know. I wasn't there. But everybody's got different opinions. On January 30th, troopers, Buchanan and Proctor interviewed Canton firefighter Katie McLaughlin. She had been assigned to Station 1 on the 29th and indicated that approximately 7 or 6 a.m., I'm making up my own time now, Canton Fire and EMS had been dispatched to 34 Fairview Road for a male party in the snow and unresponsive. Chopper, Turtle Boy lives in... Okay, I just know what I was going to read. So from what I've heard about Turtle Boy is that he lives in this area and knows some of the players. That's what I've been hearing. I don't know if that's fact or if, I don't know. I honestly have not watched anything from him. I don't have an opinion. And as far as JC, I haven't seen her comments about this case. I mean, I've seen, how do I put this? I've seen a couple of things, enough to be able to get what's going on, but I have not followed either of them when it comes to this case. As you guys know, we all like to make up our own minds when it comes to these cases and not let other people, especially on social media, form our opinions for us. So, yeah, whether there's fact, I just can't say. So, am I hearing this right? Is it your birthday today, young man? Happy birthday, Tony. Happy birthday to you. The big 6-0. I am 56. I'll be 57 in the summer. So, yeah, I'm catching up. Looking good, Tony. Looking good, friend. Okay, so let's see here. I am going to see if I can do this properly again. Is Tony making fun of himself? Absolutely, friend. Happy birthday. 60. Oh, seriously. Look at us. Look at us go. Nice. We so got this, guys. I mean, young is fun. Absolutely. But you know what? Not to offend anybody, but hell, we've got a shit ton of experience, don't we? A shit ton. Okay, I'm confused. Who's 30 and who's 60? Is he 30? Okay, we know that we got Tony, how old are you? Okay. Okay. I got a little confused. I was wondering because, I watched you guys. Tony has an awesome channel. He is a musician, and let me tell you, this guy will blow you away. If somebody doesn't mind putting his link up there, because he is amazing. I was amazed by this man's talent. Tony's one of those guys that should have made it. Absolutely should have made it. Well, Perry, hey, friend. Well, absolutely, Perry. Or sorry, Tony. It's a true story. True story. And we've also got a Tony's Place in Discord. So, Tony, if you want to drop anything in there for us to enjoy, that would be awesome. Perry's here. How you doing, friend? We're working our way through, a very heavy document right now. So you popped in at a good time. If you go back after we're done here, it gives a really good description as to what is going on if you're not. Ah, there we are. This is for Tony. This is his link. So yeah, if you go back, it'll give you a good idea as to what's going on with this case. And if you know, well, then you're going to understand totally what the document is about. Okay. Subscribe to Tony's Place, Playpen. Good job, Shauna. Amazing, right? Yeah. I mean, I don't think when it comes to social media, when they're, be very careful. I guess that's what I have to say. Just be very, very careful. And absolutely do your own research, because everybody has got their opinions. And, you know, I do not want to make my opinions based on other people's opinions. Okay, let's see here. So upon arrival, Miss McLaughlin observed the victim to have trauma to his face and eye area and vomit in his mouth. She observed the victim to be dressed in jeans, socks, and one black Nike sneaker. Oh, that's interesting. The victim's shirt were cut and his chest exposed for chest compressions. Miss McLaughlin had exited the ambulance to speak with the defendant as to the victim's identity and medical history. The defendant provided the victim's name and date of birth. Miss McLaughlin asked the defendant if she knew where the victim had suffered the trauma to his face and eye. And the defendant turned to her friend and stated repeatedly, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him," in response to the paramedic's question. So is she saying this because this is her fear that this had happened? Because I don't know. We're going to have to see an actual video of her backing up and hitting something, because the video that we put out yesterday that we seen when I did that mutual stream, I guess, with the alternate corner. You'll learn a lot during that as well. So check that out as well. Okay, following their initial witness interviews on January 29th, troopers Bokanik and Proctor then proceeded to the Good Samaritan to view the victim. They observed 6 bloodied lacerations varying in length on his right arm. The cuts extended from his forceps to his bicep. So you guys are just going to have to tell me if you believe this to be from trigger warning. Anybody? Trigger warning. What do you guys think? Does that look like dog bites, or does that look like being backed over? Remembering he had a long sleeve shirt on. So let's see here. Both the victim's eyes were swollen and shut and black and blue in color. The trooper observed a cut to the right eye of the victim. The victim's clothing consisted of blue jeans, an orange t-shirt, long sleeve gray shirt, and boxer shorts were soaking wet and saturated with DNA and vomit. The victim was also observed to have one black Nike sneaker with a white Nike logo on the side. The victim's medical records were admitted as exhibit before the grand jury in this matter as well. It would be grand jury exhibit number 25. Throughout said medical records, the attending physician and medical personnel described the victim's injuries at length. Said the description of his injuries and medical condition include right superior orbital ridge region, approximately 7 millimeters laceration, and soft tissue swelling contusion, and breath sounds bilateral, pulseless, superficial abrasions on the forearm. Time of death noted at 7:50 a.m. So that's not a lot of information right there. Let's hope there's more. Like I was saying earlier, I can't get a hold of this document. If anybody knows where it is, I would love to see it. Oh, let's see here. Is there something in Discord that I've missed? Oh, those pictures. Yes. Thank you very much. Take a good look. Those are in Discord. I do have them up, but I think the first grouping I would get in trouble for. But you guys can see it under the Karen Read in Discord. And it's free. Ooh, January 31st, Dr. Irini Scordi-Bello from the Office of Chief Medical Examiners conducted the autopsy of Mr. O'Keefe. The doctor advised the trooper that she observed several abrasions to the victim's right forearms, swollen black eyes, a small cut above the right eye, a cut to the left side of the nose, and approximately 2-inch laceration to the back of his head, multiple skull fractures that resulted in bleeding of the brain. Dr. Scordi-Bello further advised the trooper that the victim's pancreas was dark red colors, indicating hypothermia was a contributing factor to, you see, and that's what we've been hearing, that when he was looked at, hypothermia was a large part of his passing. Yeah, Tony, abrasions, those were deep gouges, 1,000%. Dr. Scordi-Bello opined from her examination that the significant blunt force trauma injuries occurred prior to Mr. O'Keefe's becoming hypothermic, as evidenced by hemorrhaging in his pancreas and stomach. So guys, okay, what does this sound like to you? Does this sound in any possible way that he was backed over? Oh my word. So this is them in happier days. And this is Officer John O'Keefe. And this is here what we were just talking about. This is where he was found. You notice there's grass underneath that, which I find very interesting. And they're saying this is about 12 feet from the road. Well said, Dandy. Lacerations from teeth, maybe? That's my concern. And I mean, if you do some research, you're gonna probably, there's doubt, guys. There's doubt. Okay, so contributing factor to his passing, Dr. Scordi-Bello opined from her examination, significant blunt force trauma injuries occurring prior to him becoming hypothermic. Mr. O'Keefe had arrived at the Good Samaritan Medical Center with a body temperature reading in the low 80s. The doctor opined that the extensive injuries to his head likely rendered Mr. O'Keefe incapacitated. So, which means he probably did not get backed over and then carted to that and walked over to that place where he just decided to lay down. They're basically saying here, and this is how I'm reading, that he was incapacitated. So if he's incapacitated, how did he end up 12 feet from the roadway? So the doctor further opined that viewing Mr. O'Keefe's injuries and her examination of the body, she observed no signs in any type of physical fight or altercation. Okay, this is where I'm starting to disagree, guys. Hey, I'm not a medical examiner. This is just my opinion. Again, it's the think tank. This is where we just throw out our thoughts and try and see if we can come up with something that makes more sense than some things that get put out. So we're not talking fact. Unless it's on a legal document like we're reading right now, it's not fact. So in addition, Dr. Scorti-Bello testified extensively regarding her examination and findings before the grand jury. See attached grand jury minutes dated May 19th, 2022, exhibits 24, 26, and 27, as well as Dr. Scorti-Bello's report of autopsy, OCME file number 2022-1697. In her testimony, the doctor described the medical definition of a laceration, a contusion, and an abrasion, as well as difference between the three. The doctor testified that the victim had abrasions on his right arm. She described abrasions as scratches caused by a blunt object. So what did she say again? I'm going to read that again. She describes abrasion and scratches caused by a blunt object. What do you think? Does that look like an abrasion from a blunt object? Yes. Isn't that something? How can Emmy rule out physical alteration with all those injuries, even if she believed he was hit by a vehicle? Exactly. Not the part of the weapon that inflicts injury. Well, he had multiple abrasions. They do not appear to be from something blunt. It's from something sharp. In my opinion, they look like dog bites, guys. They look like dog bites. And we know that this house had a German Shepherd named Chloe that was rehomed. And at this point, I don't think anyone can locate. So she went on to describe them as a cluster of them on his right upper arm and on his forearm, mostly linear and ranging from size from a few millimeters up to 7 centimeters. Dr. Scorti-Bello testified that throughout and through external examination of the victim's body, she observed, again, no signs of an altercation or fight. Black eyes, scraped knuckles. The doctor also testified extensively to the injuries or swelling on the victim's eyes. Dr. Scorti-Bello testified from her examination of the victim, both external and internal, that the bleeding and subsequent swelling of his eyes was related to very small fractures in the skull. She testified specifically that the injury initiated or started at the back of the head, caused all the fractures in the skull. Then the eyes got red or black or purple because of the seepage of DNA from the small blood vessels. Oh boy. Does that make any sense? Now, I have to admit, I can kind of see that part. But because of this doesn't eliminate other black eyes, like from getting into a scrap. The guy also has an injury on his nose. Now, that's not from a fall from and hitting the back of his head. The neuropathy report completed by Dr. Renee Stonebridge, also of the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, are consistent with Dr. Scorti-Bello's findings. At approximately 4:30 p.m. on January 29th, troopers Buchanek and Proctor arrived at the residence in Digton, Mass., the home of the defendant's parents. Upon their arrival, they observed a large black Lexus SUV bearing license plate number 3GC684 and registered to the defendant, parked outside the garage doorway to the driveway, in the driveway to the home. The troopers observed the rear right passenger side taillight to be shattered and a large red plastic piece to be missing from the taillight. The troopers were invited into the home and observed the defendant sitting on the living room couch. The defendant agreed to speak with the troopers. The defendant indicated to the troopers that she had met the victim at C.F. McCarthy's bar in Canton at approximately 9 p.m. the evening prior. The victim had been there with friends prior to her arrival. She stated that the victim was drinking beer and she was drinking vodka soda. Okay. She described the glassware she was drinking out as vase style. The defendant stated that she and the victim left C.F. McCarthy's and went to the waterfall, but denied that she had taken a drink from one bar to the next. She stated that they were at the waterfall for approximately 1 hour during that time. There were no arguments amongst anyone present there. When she and the victim were leaving the waterfall, she stated that they were invited to the house on Fairview Road. The defendant stated that she had dropped the victim off at the house on Fairview and went home since she was having stomach issues at the previous bar. The defendant stated that she dropped the victim off and made a 3-point turn and in the street and left. She stated that she did not see the victim enter the residence. The defendant indicated that she first observed the broken taillight in the morning and did not know how she had broken it the previous evening. The victim was uninjured when she dropped him off at the house. However, when she discovered him the next morning, she observed him lying face up, snow on his legs, his eyes swollen, and stuff coming from his nose and mouth. She stated that she had been providing him mouth to mouth. The defendant further stated that she attempted to contact the victim throughout the night, calling and texting him numerous times with no response. She stated they had a verbal argument that morning over what the defendant fed the victim's niece for breakfast. The troopers further asked defendant for contact information relating to the people she had indicated were present at the bars. She obliged, and prior to providing, she said, the troopers observed the defendant to enter a numerical passcode into her phone to unlock it prior to retrieving said data. The black SUV was seized from the driveway of the defendant's parents' home in Dighton on January 29. The vehicle was then transported via tow to the Canton Police Department on February 1st. Members of the Massachusetts State Police Crime Scene Services and Crime Lab chemists and Trooper Joseph Paul of the Massachusetts State Police Collision Analysis and Reconstruction Section, CARS, responded to the department. They observed fragments of broken glass on the rear bumper of the vehicle. The rear right passenger side taillight was shattered and pieces were observed missing from the red and clear areas. On the right side of the rear tailgate, a deep scratch and minor dent were observed. On the right side of the rear bumper, above a small red light, 2 scratches were observed as well on the area where the paint was chipped off. Troopers from CARS unit performed a rapid acceleration, forward and reverse test with the vehicle and noted no deficiency from the vehicle's braking system or other operations. The trooper placed a training figure resembling a human, approximately 6 feet in height, behind the Lexus. The vehicle was operated by a CARS trooper and documented the video with from the crime scene. The vehicle was placed in reverse and started to travel toward the training center, the training figure. The rear view camera within the vehicle was operating properly. Okay, with that said, weren't they saying there was some kind of blizzard? I'm just wondering. And if you happen to hit somebody, wouldn't you like bump? Hello, James. Good to see you, friend. Good to see you. Okay, so they checked the systems and they are now testing it with a figure resembling a human that is approximately 6 feet in height. The vehicle was operated by a CARS trooper and documented with a video from the crime scene. The vehicle was placed in reverse and started to travel toward the training figure. The rear view camera within the vehicle was operating properly, displayed on a screen in the center of the dashboard, and provided 360-degree overhead visual. As the Lexus traveled closer to the figure, both auditory and visual cues within the vehicle sounded off, indicating an obstruction to the rear. Okay, so that's telling me something, right? That can be taken two different ways, right? So in addition, forensic scientist Maureen Hartnett responded to the Canton Police Department that date and took samples from the Lexus. She observed damage to the rear of the vehicle on the passenger side, including a dent with chip paint in the trunk door, a broken tail light, and scratches on the bumper. An apparent hair was noted on the rear passenger side quarter panel. Said apparent hair was subsequently has been forensically tested and confirmed to be human hair. And it says see attached Mass State Police Crime Lab report. I'll see if I can find that. I haven't yet. And apparent glass was also noted on the rear bumper. Also on January 29th, the Mass State Police Special Emergency Response Team, CERT, was activated to assist in searching for possible evidence outside 34 Fairview Road. Members from CERT team located a black Nike sneaker with a white Nike logo along the side, matching the one worn by the victim the time his body was discovered, in the same area where the body had been recovered. 2 red plastic pieces of taillight were located, consistent to the missing pieces from the defendant's back Lexus. 1 piece of clear plastic taillight was located in the same area as well, also consistent with a broken taillight on the Lexus. The CERT team discovered these items after digging through the still falling snow. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of that? I know, right, Tony? This makes no sense. Scratches on the bumper and busted tail light with a hair found on the corner. Sorry, on the corner of the quarter panel. And it's just what? It's like, what are they trying? So, I imagine they didn't get a second opinion, which would have been a really, really good idea, but it could be proven. Oh, Jazzy says, good morning. Jazz, I could be proven wrong further in these documents. I am just going by what I've learned so far. And what you guys are learning, like I say, I like to do things fairly organically so I can learn with you. And what I'm learning is very suspicious. Why are you barking? On January 31st, sorry, gotta get a biscuit. Investigators observed video from the Ring cameras affixed to 1 Meadows Avenue, the residence of Mr. O'Keefe. This video was observed by utilizing the Ring application on the victim's cell phone. The data in the application showed that 2 cameras are connected to the victim's account under this email. The 2 cameras cover the front door and the driveway to the home. From 6 p.m. on January 28th through 6 a.m. on January 29th, the Ring application showed approximately 15 events between the 2 cameras of the residence. Investigators observed on the Ring video from the driveway camera the defendant's SUV leaving, that's all I got for you, leaving the right garage door and traveling out of the driveway onto Meadows Avenue and turning left onto Pleasant Street at approximately 5:08 a.m. On January 29th, investigators were not able to locate any Ring video of the same SUV arriving at the home prior to that. Specifically, no video of the defendant arriving at the victim's home after leaving the Fairview residence in the early morning hours of January 29th. After leaving the Fairview residence in the early mornings of January 29th was contained within said available footage. Okay. The victim's Chevrolet Travis SUV was parked in the far right corner of the driveway as the defendant's SUV exited in reverse from the garage, coming close to the victim's SUV. As the defendant's vehicle exits the driveway, and that's the footage I've seen, I guess. The troopers observed her right passenger side taillight to be broken. On February 3rd, Trooper Evan Brandt from Crime Scene Services arrived with Trooper Proctor at the home and documented all sides of the traverse and the garage doors. No damage was observed anywhere on the vehicle or the doors. No fragments or pieces of broken taillight were discovered in the victim's driveway, nor are any observed on the ground or anywhere in the driveway when the defendant's vehicle is seen leaving the driveway at 5:08 a.m. On February 1st, troopers Buchanan and Keefe traveled to C.F. McCarthy's bar and spoke with the manager at the bar. They reviewed the secure video from inside the establishment from January 28th and receipts. From the interior surveillance video, the troopers observed Mr. O'Keefe walking into the establishment wearing jeans, black Nike sneakers, and gray long sleeve shirt, and a dark baseball hat with an American flag on the front. At approximately 7:37 p.m., along with his friend Michael Camerano, approximately an hour later at 8:51, defendant enters the bar wearing a black jacket, black boots, black pants, and a handbag or a small purse with a white shirt underneath her jacket. 7 minutes later, at approximately 8:58, the bartender hands the defendant a tall cylinder-style glass containing clear liquid with a lime in it. At approximately 9:15 p.m., the victim hands the defendant a cylinder glass with a clear liquid and lime in it. As the following times the trooper observed in the video, defendant receiving a shot glass with a clear liquid in it, which she subsequently pours into her cylinder glass, 9:20 to 9:33, 10:22, and 10:29. Okay. At approximately 9:57 p.m., the bartender is observed handing the defendant a tall cylinder-style glass with a clear liquid in it and a shot glass with a clear liquid in it, for a total of 7 drinks the defendant receives and consumes during her time at the bar. At approximately 10:40 p.m., the victim and the defendant are observed leaving the bar with the defendant holding her last drink in her hand as she exited the door of the establishment. February 1st, troopers traveled to the waterfall bar, reviewed and secured both interior and exterior surveillance, camera footage, and as well as receipts from that establishment. From the interior cameras, the troopers observed the victim and the defendant enter the bar at approximately 10:54 p.m. At approximately 12:10 a.m., the defendant walks out with two females, leaving through the front door. Moments later, the victim, standing alone at the table, takes a sip from a short cocktail glass and walks out the front door holding the glass in his right hand. Seems these people do that. I don't know. Sorry, taking my slippers off. I get to work from home in my slippers. So, yeah, sounds like they both might be walking out of places with their drinks. Like I said, at one time, I used to. I just, yeah, I bad girl, bad girl. Let me check here. Seen a good question. Yeah, I don't think that they actually let people. I think they just sneak them out. In my 20s, I ended up with glasses from all over the place. I did. So the prosecution is confident KR was drunk. They have discussed the conditions outside, so why would they not assume it was a DUI accident? That's a really good question. Yeah, that's a really good question. Okay, I'm doing this one more time. Oh, my foot's asleep. I got it. Oh my God. Okay, so let's see. Here's get back at this. It's just what I'm finding is that there is so many opinions, so many different explanations, I would guess. A lot of people are saying that she's set up. Like, I mean, a lot of people are saying that she was set up. And I don't know what to think of that. As we get to look at this case, and you guys as well do your own research, next time we talk about this, let me know what you guys are thinking. I'm going to be very curious as we learn what, because I'm not, with all the different opinions, like I said, I'm very much starting to lean towards something foul, something smells bad. Okay, so where were we here? Just where he had left with his drink. And then the two walked together. He met up with the defendant, and then the two walked together towards Washington Street. The troopers also observed from the exterior camera that it appeared to have just begun snowing with a light coating on the ground and the cars in the parking lot. On February 2nd, troopers Dunn and Moore were canvassing for video footage in relation to the investigation. They proceeded to the Edward J. Lynch Jr. house at Pequitside Farm on Pleasant Street in Canton. They were there to retrieve video footage from the town's IT director, who confirmed that the date and timestamps on the video were correct. The troopers also viewed the recovery video from Canton Town Library external cameras. And on February 3rd, from the Temple Beth Abram B-Nitikia, I don't know what that means. Both the library and the Temple's cameras overtook Washington Street in Canton. The distance between these two buildings is approximately 1 mile. From the library video, at approximately 12:15 a.m., the troopers observed a large black SUV, consistent with the defendant's Lexus, traveling on Washington Street and continuing towards the temple 4 minutes after the victim and the defendant exited the waterfall. At approximately 12:17 a.m. from the temple video, the troopers also observed a large black SUV traveling by the building towards the intersection of Washington and Dedham Streets in the direction of Fairview Road. Mm. Oh, yeah. I'm exactly the same as you, Tony. I'm exactly the same as you. That stuff is it. Ooh, Frankie turns into a wild child. And I'm not one for hangovers. They don't last 10 minutes anymore. They last 3 days. Just jumping over to you guys. Yep. Glass dust. Yeah, glass dust. Okay, now from the library video at approximately 5:11 a.m., the troopers observed a large black SUV traveling down Sherman Street, taking a left onto Washington and traveling in the direction of the waterfall. At approximately 5:15 a.m., the troopers observed a large black SUV traveling away from the area of the waterfall on Washington Street, crossing over Sherman, and continue on Washington towards the temple. From the temple video at approximately 5:18 a.m., the troopers observed a large black SUV traveling by the front of the building toward the intersection of Washington Street and Dedham Streets. In addition, the troopers received via a search warrant the defendant's Verizon cell phone records. Lieutenant Brian Tully of Massachusetts State Police examined said records and was able to plot the defendant's movements while the phone was in use for various periods of time. How interesting. Plot the defendants. The phone's movements coincided with the direction of travel with the black SUV observed on the video from the library and temple during both time frames. Okay, guys, I have a question. And this comes from watching everything they can get from the Murdoch trial. She has a fancy vehicle. If she backed over this guy, would that not show possibly a bump or something along those lines on that little black box or whatever the heck that thing is that holds, what do they call it? Information box? Wouldn't they be able to get a hold of that thing and see if that vehicle had any kind of jolt? Because I'm pretty sure that the vehicle will tell you, and it would be caught on that camera. That's what I'm thinking, Tony. If she had a rear camera, they should be able to get that data. That's what I'm thinking. And the vehicle cell data is the key to the case, I think. If that doesn't line up for the prosecution, she'll walk. Karen Read will walk. That's exactly what I am thinking, you guys. Yeah. The black box of vehicles. Well said. And most of them, 2018 up, have rear cameras. Especially, that's what I'm thinking. Like, this is a fancy ass car. Wouldn't they be able to see through this little black info box if she backed over something? Wouldn't that be registered in there? Look at all the information in that Murdoch case as to what they can find. Plus, it'll tell exactly when that taillight was broken, right? Okay, that's what I'm wondering, you guys. Like, unreal. Have you guys heard anything about this little black box and information from it yet? I'm curious. I'm curious. Okay, so back to this. So we know that the phone's movements coincided with the direction of travel, with the black SUV observed on the video from the library to the temple during both time frames. These videos and phone records on the morning of January 29th occur after the defendant spoke with Miss McCabe on the phone after redirecting the victim's niece to call Miss McCabe, and after the defendant is seen on the victim's residence ring video, leaving that home at 5:08 a.m. Am I seeing contradictions? Let me know what you think. Furthermore, the evidence the defendant traveling in the direction of the home on Fairview prior to going to Miss McCabe's home that morning. On February 22nd, both 10-year-old nephew CF and 14-year-old niece KF of the victim were interviewed at the Norfolk Advocate for Children Center in Foxborough, Mass. The children indicated that they had lived with their uncle and the victim for approximately 8 years. After the passing of both of their parents. Oh my God, these poor kids. Both children indicated that the victim and the defendant had started dating approximately 2 years ago, after having dated sometime before in the distant past. They both indicated that the defendant would stay over at their house on Meadows Avenue several nights a week. PF stated the defendant and the victim argued a decent amount of time. PF recalled a recent argument over groceries and the victim expressing needing a break from the defendant. Ooh, 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 ooh. After that particular argument, the victim wanted the defendant to leave their house. However, she refused. PF indicated that he had left the home on January 28th at approximately 8 p.m. for a sleepover at his friend's house, his or her friend's house, and was not present. So that's the little girl. So she was not present at the home overnight. PF indicated that neither he nor his sister had access to the. Hang on here. PF is a little boy. Okay. There we go. So he had a sleepover at his friend's house and was not present at the home overnight. PF indicated that neither he nor his sister had access to the ring system, but believed that the defendant did from the family computer within the home. KF indicated during her interview the defendant and the victim had argued a lot towards the end, approximately 2 to 3 times a week. She further stated that approximately a week prior to January 29th, she was sitting on a stairway inside the house while the victim and the defendant were arguing. KF stated that she heard the victim tell the defendant that the relationship had run its course, that it isn't healthy. She stated that the defendant did not want the relationship to end and refused to leave their house. KF stated that she had gone to bed at approximately 11 p.m. on January 28th after her friend had left and was awoken by the defendant at approximately 4:30 a.m. with the defendant screaming and acting frantic. The defendant ran into the victim's room to retrieve KF's cell phone, and KF then began texting and calling the victim with no response. The defendant then had KF call McCabe, but put the defendant on the phone with her. After speaking with McCabe, the defendant left the house and told KF to call Mr. Camerado to come pick her up. KF indicated during her interview that the defendant changed her story several times while speaking to Miss McCabe on the phone, with initially the defendant stating that the victim got into an argument and she dropped him off. On January 29th, the troopers also discovered Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone and were subsequently able to forensically extract the data from said phone. Their forensic extractions of the call logs, voicemails, and text messages between the victim and the defendant, including the date of January 28 and 29, detailed strains within their relationship, the victim's desire to end the relationship, and the defendant's description of their relationship with them and the two children together as toxic. The troopers recovered several voicemails from the victim's phone and the defendant. Following the time period they were in front of the resident at 34 Fairview, in which the defendant screamed to the victim that she hated him. On January 29th, the defendant was transported from the scene to the Good Samaritan Medical Center. While there, blood was drawn pursuant to her medical diagnosis and treatment at the facility. The ethanol results from said records indicate that at 9:08 a.m. on the 29th, her blood had a reading of 93 milligrams. Okay, I'm not sure what the LD means. DL. Nicholas Roberts, a forensic toxicologist from Massachusetts State Crime Laboratory, performed both a serum conversion and retrograde exfoliation of said result, opining that Miss Reed's BAC at the time on 29th was at 7 or 8%, well, 0.07, 0.08% from his retrograde exfoliation analysis. He opined that her BOC, blood alcohol, around the time of 12:45 would have been between 0.13 and 0.29%. That's pretty tanked. That's pretty tanked. Lastly, these facts summarized from the grand jury presentation that spanned several months, with at least 14 dates of testimony from approximately 42 witnesses, 1,445 pages of grand jury transcripts. See, this case is massive. I mean, again, the rabbit holes, oh my God. From approximately 42 witnesses, 1,445 pages, grand jury transcripts of sworn testimony from said witnesses. Okay, argument. When a defendant moves the court to subpoena potentially privileged records or tangible objects, a defendant must establish good cause satisfying by a showing of the following 4 criteria: that the documents are evidentiary and relevant; 2, that they are not otherwise procurable reasonably in advance of trial by exercise of due diligence; 3, that the party cannot properly prepare for a trial without such production and inspection in advance of a trial, and the failure to obtain, not obscene, inspection may tend unreasonably to delay the trial. And 4, that the application is made in good faith and is not intended as a general fishing expedition. The defendant is required, I'm going to leave out all of the sorry, not coming to me. So I'm not going to read all of the examples that they're quoting. The defendant is required to make a factual showing that the records sought to have a rational tendency to prove or disprove an issue in the case. The evidentiary standard of relevance applies. The moving party has the burden of meeting the requirements of Rule 17, including submissions of an affidavit. If defense counsel or the defendant serves as the affiant, the fact in the affidavit must be specific and in personal knowledge of counsel's sources. Mere speculation is insufficient to support this burden. The defendant here submits a supporting affidavit by one of her counsel that is simply a reiteration of an argument bereft of any evidentiary support. The defendant posits a fanciful fact section to support the conspiracy and purportedly exists in the form of the basis for her request that the subject call, detail records, and cellular phone at issue. The defendant offers only speculative grounds for her requests. Her showing is therefore inadequate. So, am I understanding this right? They're not handing over this evidence to the defense? Is this what I'm understanding? What? I don't know. Okay. So Rule 17 is reserved for evidentiary materials that are likely to be admissible at hearing or trial and not invoked merely for the exploration of potential evidence. Potential relevance or conclusionary statements regarding relevance are insufficient. I'm confused. Like, well, I know. I can't say I'm confused. Is that actually what they're saying? Or are they saying that they need to get it from a different source? It is well settled that potential relevance and conclusionary statements regarding relevance are insufficient to satisfy the Dwyer requirements. Quoting from, a defendant must make a factual showing that the requested documents have a rational decency to prove or disprove an issue of the case. The defendant bears the burden to set forth with particularly some factual basis indicating how the privileged records were likely to be relevant and material to an issue in the case, and that an examination of those records were disclosed exculpatory information material to the defendant's guilt. Generalizations and unsubstantiated statements concerning a particular victim's credibility are not enough. In the absence of any claim that the witness made any relevant statements in the furtherance or any purported conspiracy that followed the conduct that is subject of these indictments, the defendant is unreasonable. The current motion states nothing regarding Mr. Brian Albert, which was not already submitted in prior motion for this cellular phone, nor offers any relevant statement or new factual support. This motion should similarly be denied. What do you guys think about this? In Commonwealth, okay, the appeals, I know you guys, you can see them on here, but they do have all of their Cases that they refer back to that have already used either, I'm not sure how to explain this. How do I explain this? It's I'm not gonna. The appeals court has held that mental health records are not relevant simply because they exist and a victim is referred to mental health services at around the time. Anybody else want to help me with that one? Because I'm tongue-tied, not sure how I want to put that out. Okay. Because they exist and a victim is referred to mental health services at around the time she first revealed the the appeals court held that a defendant's argument that the records of the victim's appointment with her therapist after the alleged R may contain an inconsistent account or meaningful silence, was too speculative when there was no evidence the victim ever spoke to her counselor about alleged R. This was so there even though the victim had been encouraged by her doctor to speak out to the counselor about the incidents. Here, the defendant can prove no factual basis to demonstrate that the material. So it's their examples of previous cases. I think that's only the best way I can do that. Otherwise, I'm going to sit here and hiccup. Okay, so here the defendant can provide no factual basis to demonstrate that the materials are sought are relevant or would likely be admissible at trial. Of note, counsel for the defendant demonstrates no instance of knowledge, personal or otherwise, that any such conversation between these witnesses occurred, let alone occurred utilizing their respective cellular phones. Furthermore, several of these witnesses barely knew one another prior to this incident, let alone the victim. Let alone the defendant, they were also so actively purported conspiring to frame. Counsel for the defendant states merely in a conclusionary fashion based on his own conjecture and speculation, unsupported by evidence, but rather in direct opposition to the evidence and testimony presented to the grand jury in this matter, that such a conspiracy between numerous civilians, Canton police officers, other law enforcement officers acting in civil capacity as witnesses, and the entire CPAC unit of the Mass State Police in Norfolk County existed. Therefore, the entirety of this phone and requested time span are evidentiarily and relevant, and thus should be granted unfettered access to said phone, regardless of to whom any communications are directed. Okay. Acting in a civilian capacity. Okay. This is most bizarre. The Commonwealth has a compelling interest in preventing unnecessary harassment of a complainant, and other Commonwealth witness caused by burdensome, frivolous, or otherwise improper discovery requests. Okay, these guys are a complainant or witness. A complainant or witness should be forced neither to retain counsel nor appear before a court in order to challenge on the basis of a partial review of the case. potential impermissible examination of her personal effects and records of her personal interactions. The time period the defendant is requesting access is unclear, and the first page, the defendant's motion requested all cell phones in the possession of and used by Brian Albert, January 28, 2022, and present. Later in the same motion, the defendant requests information from the phone from January 28, 2022 through February 5th, 2022. The defendant requests for such unfettered access without any evidence of materiality of said content is without support. The time frame requested is never explained and is far too expansive. Furthermore, the content requested is similarly far too expansive, and there is seemingly no limitation as to what content is being sought. Well, can they not subpoena this stuff? It makes sense that they would be able to subpoena this stuff. So is this guy, that's what he's doing, is he's fighting a subpoena for the information on this guy? Like, The Commonwealth objects to the production of his phone, particularly in the boundless manner in which counsel suggests, as far as Mr. Albert producing his phone to counsel to be given to his expert with no oversight by the court. So why doesn't this guy, I mean, if he's so innocent, you're turning your phone. What the hell? That's an easy fix. It does. I'm like, what? Are we losing JJ? Is he off to bed? Have a good night, friend. Thank you very much for being here. You are so awesome. Our JJ from Scotland. Isn't that what I thought? It shouldn't matter what they request. The prosecution is required by law to hand over all evidence in their possession. Okay, yes. So what the hell? So what if this guy, okay, tell me this then. What do you guys think if the if the prosecutors have not asked for the information, if they have not gotten a subpoena to take the information from this phone, can the defense do that on their own? All discovery, all evidence needs handling over way before trial. No warrants and motions needed for that. So I'm really wondering. I don't know. Yeah, the grand jury indicted her. Yeah, she's got some pretty kick-butt attorneys. How often, how far is it to then obtain those rights, that result right before trial? Because I sure as won't matter if they get it during. That shouldn't be allowed. No, this is what it's like. Why are they fighting? That's right. Like, hell yeah, what is the problem here? I'm not understanding. I am absolutely going to be deep diving on this. There is way too much to this case. So as you guys know, if you're not subscribed, please do, and hit that bell. We are covering, there's been so many lately. It's just like, holy crap. Jennifer Dulos's case. So regarding the weather there, they were expecting a storm and unsure if they were going to be in court. And if they're not in court, There's also the treehouse that we've been following, but I really want to do some more on this case because there's way too much. This one memorandum is, we need more info, right? We just need more info. Yeah, prosecution is stalling. Yeah, I think that's basically, they have asked for it. And this is the response from the prosecution. I think they're just trying to say, no, that they're not entitled to get this guy's information. Attorneys have filed motions with the courts to force the prosecutors to release the evidence, but they are not complying. Dandy she knows a hell of a lot more about this case than I do. So, yeah. Yeah, some penalties for holding back. I would think so. I would absolutely think so. Like, my understanding is the prosecution has to hand over everything. That's what I thought. But I mean, I can't say. Okay. So Rule 17 contains a means of process of which a party may request from the courts either summons for witness or for the production of documentary evidence and or objects. I don't really know what that is. I'm not sure what that is, guys. So I think it's done. Here, the defendant has filed a motion accompanied by an affidavit of counsel that is bereft of any references to the relevance or anything beyond mere circumspection that materials, relevant or not, even exist. With regard to this witness's phone. Furthermore, the defendant has failed to show that anything contained within this phone bears any remote relevance to the substance of the charges before the court. So we have to remember that the feds are also looking at this right now. This has gone further. Because of this case, the feds are basically looking to see what the heck is going on here. The defendant seeks through this motion to obtain any and all of the subject witness party's phone, which could contain the cross of myriad of subjects pertaining to the witnesses without even a shred of support that any of the materials bear even the slightest relevance to the charges that bring the defendant before this court. The defendant's request in this respect is far too overboard. The requests suffer as well as overly broad frailty in the extensive time frame from which they request said phone data. These requests are far too overboard, far too expansive in length of the time they request. And before police may search a cell phone, they must obtain a narrow, particularized warrant supported by probable cause, as general warrants and unrestrained searches were one of the driving forces behind the American Revolution and foundations of the Fourth Amendment. This case does not, as counsel states, hinge solely upon the testimonies of Miss McCabe. The statement and testimony of other witnesses, the forensic evidence, and video evidence are conjectively simply hard to reconcile with counsel's facts. Even assuming everything averred is true and accurate, the predominant amount of statements made by the defendant to this witness were made by the defendant in the presence of additional witnesses, which is conspicuously absent from counsel's recitation. Counsel states that the defendant has always maintained the purported story of her leaving Mr. O'Keefe at the Fairview residence and calling him repeatedly to ensure that he was safely within the home. The defendant stated a lot of things to a lot of witnesses, and the troopers in her interview with them. However, this version that the defendant has consistently maintained is one of first impression. The defendant seems to suggest that the body of Mr. O'Keefe was discovered that morning by the defendant and Miss McCabe. However, Miss Roberts was present with them at this time as well, but remains absent from counsel's recitation of the facts. Counsel further states that Miss McCabe inserted herself into the defendant's search that morning for Mr. O'Keefe. However, it was the defendant that woke the victim's niece up at 4:30 a.m., had the niece repeatedly text and call the victim, and then asked or instructed the niece to call Miss McCabe at 4:53 a.m. Miss McCabe answered the call from the victim's niece, not the defendant. During this call, the defendant stated that Miss McCabe initially stated that she last remembered seeing the victim at the waterfall. When informed by Miss McCabe that she had seen the victim and defendant leaving the waterfall together, as seen the defendant vehicle in front of the Fairview residence. The defendant then stated that she had left the victim on Fairview after they had gotten into an argument. The statements made by the defendant to Miss McCabe during this call were confirmed by the victim's niece in her interview. The defendant then drove the victim home to Miss McCabe's home, exiting the garage at 5:08 per the victim's Ring camera footage. Said Ring footage, however, does not contain any video of the defendant's arrival to the victim's home after she left the Fairview residence. The defendant arrived home to the home of Miss McCabe at approximately 5:30, but I thought the niece said that she came, okay, but she came in about 4:30. Shortly followed by Miss Roberts, whom the defendant had also called that morning and provided a different story as to the victim's whereabouts than what she had earlier stated to Miss McCabe. The video on both County Town Library and Temple, coupled with movements of the defendant's cellular phone, detail the prior to going to Miss McCabe's home. The defendant went in both direction of the waterfall and the resident on Fairview. Counsel suggests that Miss McCabe delayed the defendant's return to Fairview residence that morning, when the evidence demonstrates that she had already been there before she even went to Miss McCabe's home. This case is simply not, as counsel misconstrues, solely and wholly reliant on the testimony of Miss McCabe. So what? Do they have those records? What the hell? Counsel for the defendant states the victim's injuries demonstrate that he was attacked severely and left to pass. The victim's medical records belie this characterization of the injuries. They needed another autopsy. They needed another autopsy. Do you guys, well, I don't know if this guy was cremated or not. I mean, I didn't mean that to be disrespectful. I don't know if Mr. O'Keefe was cremated. So, counsel for the defendant states the victim's injuries demonstrate that he was attacked. The victim's medical records belie that. The medical records from Good Samaritan characterize the victim's injuries as right superior orbital ridge region, approximately 7 millimeter laceration and surrounding soft tissue swelling, contusion, and breath sounds bilaterally, pulseless, and superficial abrasions. Oh, we've seen those. If you guys want to see the other pictures, there's a couple on Discord that will give you an idea about the injuries, but you have to get onto Discord. It is in the description, and maybe if one of my mods wouldn't mind throwing that up in chat, that would be awesome as well. Best mods ever. Okay, so let's see here. Yeah, right arm injuries and scratches. The doctor noted that they appear in a linear pattern. The doctor detailed that she observed no signs of an altercation or fight from her examination of Mr. O'Keefe. Lastly, thanks, Mexi. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. We don't have the evidence to give you shows anything, but we're going to put her in prison. It's quite the case. Quite the case. I will. I'm going to have to go through more documents. Lastly, she testified in great detail as to the swelling of his eyes being related to the fractures in his skull and how those manifest into the observable swelling and discoloration on his face. There is no conflicting accounts of the victim exiting the defendant's vehicle and entering the residence on Fairview, as counsel states. Mr. Nagel's testimony does not demonstrate what counsel suggests. Mr. Nagel did not say that there was not a passenger. We're out of water. So Mr. Nagel did not say that there was a passenger in the defendant's vehicle. He stated merely that he drove past the vehicle. He only saw a female operator. Mr. Nagel also testifies that the vehicle, he was a passenger within, and the defendant's vehicle arrived on Fairview at the same time, pulling up to the curb in front of the residence in tandem. Mr. Nagel further stated at no time did he see the defendant's vehicle without its brake lights illuminated. Never saw anyone exit the vehicle, let alone enter the home. Saw no footprints around the vehicle, nor anyone outside of it. Never observed any damage to the defendant's vehicle and never lost sight of the vehicle from the time it pulled onto the street until the time he left his friend's truck. Mr. Nagel's statements do not substantiate the victim entered the home. Okay, but it also, if the vehicle drove away and he still didn't see him anywhere? Anywhere? Yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense either. So Mr. Nagel's statements do not substantiate that the victim entered the home, but rather point more to the evidence that neither the victim nor anyone else had yet exited the defendant's vehicle while Mr. Nagel was in front of the home. All parties within the residence, as well as Mr. Nagel, are consistent in they say that they never observed anyone exit the vehicle or come into the residence. So what does that tell you? She was alone in the vehicle, and no one's seen him. She didn't hoof him 12 feet. That didn't happen. Mr. Nagel's statements do not substantiate that the victim entered the home, but rather more to the point, more to evince that neither the victim nor anyone else had yet exited the defendant's vehicle, and yet he never took his eyes off of it. All parties within the residence, as well as Mr. Nagel, are consistent that they never observed. I know I go over some of this sometimes. It's more or less, so it sinks. It's like, what? I gotta read that again. Okay, so he yet exited the defendant's vehicle while Mr. Nagel was in front of the home. All parties within the residence, as well as Mr. Nagel, are consistent in they never observed anyone exit the vehicle or come into the residence. The defendant is still present in her vehicle in front of the residence when Mr. Nagel leaves. Therefore, he cannot account for everything the defendant did in front of the home. Okay. The defendant states that Miss McCabe stated to Trooper Proctor that while they were searching for Mr. O'Keefe, the defendant repeatedly asked, could I have hit him? Did I hit him? The defendant, wouldn't he have been left on the road? The defendant also repeated these statements when the body of the victim was discovered, as reflected in testimony of Miss McCabe, Miss Roberts, and first responder Miss McLaughlin. In response to the paramedics' question regarding the causation of the injuries to the victim, counsel states that Miss McCabe falsely tells Trooper Proctor that the defendant began screaming to pull over when she, Miss Roberts, and first responders, in response to the paramedics' questions regarding the causation of the industry. Counsel states that Miss McCabe falsely tells Trooper Proctor that the defendant began screaming to pull over because she saw the victim before he was actually visible. Miss Roberts stated the same to the troopers as well as in her grand jury testimony. Counsel also refers to Trooper Proctor as a close family friend of both the McCabes and the Alberts. He is not. The photograph that counsel attached to this motion and several preceding motions said to depict the trooper with one of McCabe's children is simply not accurate. Well, guys, the McCabes have 4 daughters. The juvenile female is not depicted, is not one of them. The young child is related to Trooper Proctor and of no relation to the McCabes. Counsel also describes the precipitation at 6:04 a.m. on January 29th as minimal. The Canton police cruiser camera footage off of Officer Saraf's cruiser that morning, as well as the statement and testimony by numerous witnesses present that morning, are in direct contradiction to that. Yeah. Everyone's saying it was a whiteout. All of the things that counsel states Miss McCabe did to set the narrative are corroborated by other witnesses or video or both. As aforementioned, the current motion states, if anything in its facts as it relates to Mr. Albert, the motion spends a great deal of time attempting to discredit Miss McCabe. As it pertains to Miss McCabe, the defendant avers that new revelations have been discovered by their expert, Mr. Richard Green, from his analysis of Miss McCabe's phone that were previously withheld from the defense. Mr. Green's analysis, however, much like the facts section of counsel's motion, is either incorrect or incomplete. This is holy crap, guys. In its details of the evidence. Similarly, too, if taken divorced from the context of the entirety of the evidence, it too can easily be misconstrued. The Commonwealth did not withhold the information from the defense when the defense requested the raw extracted data from the Commonwealth. It was timely provided as detailed in Trooper Nicholas G's report. Commonwealth ran Miss McCabe's phone through Celebrate UFED Reader that was created on May 4th, 2022. The defense expert called Celebrate Physical Analyzer version 761.012, a newer, updated version of the software utilized to download said material. The purported incriminating search in question does not appear in the downloaded material using an earlier version of the software and was therefore not in the earlier extraction. The updated version of Celebrate that was not in existence at the time of the trooper's initial download does show such a search. However, the Google search "How long to die in cold" did not occur. See, like what? The file was parsed from a write-ahead log. A WAL file is a file that is SQLite database creates to temporarily store data prior to being written into a database. WAL files can contain multiple copies of the same page, each with different data records. An iPhone user would not be able to access WAL file through a phone to purposely delete entries placed there, as counsel purports Ms. McCabe did. In addition, at that exact same time of 2:27:40 a.m., there is a search located in the Knowledge Seed database for ozonebasketball.com teams. This timestamp, excuse me, is the last interaction of the Safari tab in the iPhone search, the Ozone Basketball website at 2:27:40, and not a search for how long to die in cold. This search would have been purged from the WAL file once the tab was closed because it would have been committed to the database. At the same time period that the defendant highlights Ms. McCabe's cellular phone, shows several unrelated searches that were conducted and also show as deleted from WAL file for Canton Girls Basketball and YouTube music video. The defense expert also located a picture artifact from the Safari cache records with URL pertaining to how long does it take to digest food. When this URL is run, it brings up an image of a person with a plate of food on a counter before them cutting up said food. There is no evidence of any search being made for the query in Ms. McCabe's phone history. So do they already have this information, guys? Like, what the hell? Good Lord, man. Give me 2 seconds, guys. You guys chit-chat and I need to grab some liquid. Oh. 2 seconds. Let me see what you guys are up to here. I agree, Perry. It said she hit so hard he flew 12 feet. Even a drunkard would feel that. And again, wouldn't that be data that would be in that vehicle's red box or whatever it is? I don't know what they call it. So they're saying she backed up over him. Yeah, I don't know of any injuries. You know how most injuries, when you get hit by a vehicle, it's like your legs. I mean, it's exactly where your body reaches. So your hips, your legs. If she backed up to him there, but I don't see any kind of, we'll go back to that picture. I don't see any kind of tracks that show that. Do you guys? That's not the best picture. Oh, we'll take a look at that other one again. I mean, you don't, that's not what you see. Right in there. They're saying between the flag and the the fire hydrant. Well, I don't know. I don't see any tire tracks that, or I don't, if you hit someone, you rev up that bad, don't you gonna kind of like spin a bit? I don't know. I don't know. Okay, so the defense expert also located, let me come back to you guys. So the defense expert also located a deleted screenshot of Brian Albert's contact information. The screenshot was created at 6:08 a.m. on January 29th, 2022. A review of the call log showed that Miss McCabe's phone makes calls to Nicole and Brian Adams' phones that morning. The first call to Nicole Albert happens about 6:07:42, and while listed as answered, lasts for the duration of 9 seconds. The second call to Nicole Albert occurs at 6:08:17, and while also listed as answered, lasts for the duration of 7 seconds. Calls that go to voicemail register as answered. The call to Brian occurs at 6:23 and is listed as unanswered. Brian Albert's contact information was not deleted from the phone and was still present when Miss McCabe signed her voluntary consent to search and download it. So if they've got it, are they just not passing it over? Is this what they're saying? Like that? uh, I'm a little confused right now as to whether or not they have that information. Um, Give me a second here. I don't even know who that is. I have to go over here. Sorry, guys. Okay. Okay, the defense expert also highlighted that reviewed health and location data from both Miss McCabe and Mr. O'Keefe's cellular phones. Review, okay. Counsel for the defendant states that this data unequivocally shows that Miss McCabe was up all night pacing around second floor of her home, and that Mr. O'Keefe entered the residence on Fairview. Omitted from the defendant's motion is the fact that the same data relied upon for that supposition also reveals that Mr. O'Keefe presumably took 133 steps at 8:08 a.m., 68 steps at 8:25 a.m., 87 steps at 7:57, 81 steps at 11:06, 109 steps at 11:18, and 46 steps at 11:56 a.m. Mr. O'Keefe was pronounced deceased at the Good Samaritan Hospital at 7:50 a.m. What? The defendant's motion also highlights that Mr. O'Keefe's data indicates that between 12:21:14 a.m. and 12:24:37 a.m., his health data reads that the phone descended 3 floors, and therefore Mr. O'Keefe must have entered the Fairview home. Oh, really? And therefore, Mr. O'Keefe must have entered the home on Fairview. To call this data unreliable is an understatement. Trooper Gary O'Neill, Guarino, G, analyzed this health data and cross-referenced it with the I've been talking a while. Native location in Celebrate and the location data in Axiom belonged to John O'Keefe's phone. Trooper G located a WAZE Waze search for the 34 Fairview address conducted at 12:20:08 a.m. on January 29. The native location then depicts Mr. O'Keefe's phone traveling on Dedham Street and arriving at the residence at 12:24:34 a.m. Therefore, Mr. O'Keefe's phone would have descended within the Fairview residence prior to his arrival at the residence. The location data's next entry is in the vicinity of 34 Fairview Road at 12:56:25 a.m. In the same location, a check of the location data in Axiom shows the last location at 34 Fairview Road and speed meters sections at 12:25:36 a.m. with a speed of 0.6346 m/s. The location data stays consistent at 34 Fairview with no speed being registered until 6:56. I don't know where I got that. 6:15:36 with a speed of 0.0484 ms. This overbroad request does not meet, and they're giving some more examples here. Statements concerning a particular victim's credibility are not enough. Affidavit based on hypothetical insufficient. As the Supreme Judicial Court made clear in Lambton and repeated in Dwyer, requirements 3 and 4 of test laid out in United States versus Nixon both serve as reminders that Rule 17 is not a discovery tool, and that the limited purpose Rule 17A2 is to authorize a court to expedite the trial by providing a time and place before the trial. Why milliseconds? Is that okay? Milliseconds. I appreciate that. Millisecond. Okay, in order for her to have hit this guy and he flew 12 feet, what are we talking about here? And why the hell is this phone moving around so much? I don't know. This is not clearing up anything for me. I'm just getting more and more questions. Not a discovery tool. Although relevancy is a loose term, the defendant must advance in good faith some factual basis that indicates how the privileged records are likely to be relevant to an issue in the case. So why are they calling them privileged? How does that work? Simply put, counsel's facts section assumes or attempts to sensationalize or misconstrue statements made by and between these witnesses. The motions merely assumes through no evidentiary support that such a wide range conspiracy exists, that any such content indicative of said conspiracy must be found within this phone and call detail records that would be relevant. However, the motion is scant in any evidence that any such statement was ever made by the witness or such said conspiracy ever existed. The defendant's motion contains no specific or even opaque mention of known statements by the witnesses to each other, let alone through the employment of cellular device he seeks. There is nothing to demonstrate that the items sought are either evidentiary or relevant, or that this is anything but a fishing expedition. For the foregoing reasons and those articulated by the Commonwealth at the hearing of this motion, this request should be denied. Respectfully submitted for the Commonwealth, Michael W. Morrissey, DA. May 3rd, 2023. So yeah, guys, did that clear anything up for you? What are you thinking about this? Like, what? I'd love to see the prosecution attempt to recreate their theory. Right, Perry? 1000%, friend. 1000%. So there is a lot going on around this case. I mean, there's a lot of people that believe that she is being framed. Like a lot of people. Okay, here we go again. This is what's happening around this case. And the trial is set at this point for March 12th. And there's this much going on around the case right now. It totally blows me away. Yeah, that if he flew 12 feet, yeah, I'd think so. Yeah, don't do that. Don't think logically. None of that happening. Not on this channel. We won't have it. Oh my God. So is the Canadian, my friend. So is the Canadian. Yeah, that's kind of what they're saying. Stop your critical thinking. Don't do it. That's what I was saying earlier, Tony. If he was hit by a car, that gash on the back of his head, he would either have been on the back of his head directly with the vehicle or hit with another. It's right. Object. Being hit in the front and then landing on feet in snow, I don't think this would have caused the gash on the back of his head. Right? You guys, I am glad I'm not the only one thinking this way because it's like, what the hell is going on here? It looks like they're trying to say that his arm took the blow from the car. He hit his head from falling on it. Yeah, and the injury is so bad that it looks like he fell 3 stories. I don't see how she could have been moving fast enough to do that damage. Wouldn't the snow make traction hard to get? I would certainly think so. I would certainly think so. How that in God's green earth did she? I don't see it. I don't see it. I really can't see how the injuries on his arm can be considered or consistent, sorry, with being hit by a vehicle, even if he went underneath the vehicle, which isn't what the prosecution alleges. No, they're saying she backed over him. That's what they're saying. And I have not, from any of the pictures I've seen anything that looks like a tire mark. I haven't seen a tire tread anywhere. I have seen things that look an awful lot like dog bites. What on the back of the vehicle would cause those lacerations? Yeah, yes. The taillight, I'm assuming nothing else could really have done that from a car. Rocks, branches, dogs, and yeah, those scratches. Even a broken taillight isn't going to cause such widespread lacerations, in my opinion. No, and they wouldn't cause, I don't know, scratches that are like they're consistently two. Every once in a while, you get that third one. That's what? She would have had to like back over and then back over and then back over. How many times over that arm? And with that said, where is the tire track? 12 feet would be around 30, 35 miles per hour in the snow backing up. Yeah, I would say, right? You got to think people would have heard her revving up that engine. License plate holder. But look at how low those are. He would have to have something on his legs, in my personal opinion. If she backed over him, where's the dirt, grease, oil marks? No tire marks on him. Does not add up. And hit nothing else, like a fire hydrant or flagpole. Yes. Yeah, he would have had burns. There's no damage except the tail light. Make it make sense. Causing anything to fly 12 feet is going to damage the body of the vehicle. Well said, Mexi. Yep. Yep. Nope, me either, friend. Yeah, good call. You'd see remnants underneath the vehicle and a bit in the lower front area. We humans are a lot more fragile. I saw a woman get side hit by a vehicle looking back out of a parking lot and her shoes went flying. They do, they get knocked right out of their freaking shoes. Like, I mean, knocked out of their shoes. Yeah, that's not, when you get hit, it's usually, I mean, look where the back of the car reaches on you when you're walking behind it. My son was hit by a turning car at low speeds. He flew out of his shoes. Yeah. His face would have hit the back glass or something if he was standing upright. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. To fly 12 feet, you got to be traveling. They said there was a hair on the back quarter panel. They did. Now, I don't know what that was. Was he bent over? Wouldn't that cause totally bizarre injuries? I'd love to see the prosecution attempt to recreate this theory, drunk in snowy conditions. Yes, it all sounds like the magic bullet theory. Hey, Chopper. Oh, yummy. It does. It sounds super, super fishy. I don't like the beans either. Everything can sound off until we get both sides to this case. Yeah, and like we were saying, the feds are looking into this department and what's going on. So that's going to be interesting to find out as well. No, the arm injuries make absolutely no sense whatsoever. If she backed over him, he wouldn't have flew 12 feet. Exactly. She is saying they are saying that she backed over him. How did he end up over there? And why is there broken glass over there, like the taillight pieces? I don't know. It doesn't make sense. I figured it out. Karen was driving the Mad Max Special Limited Edition Lexus. Yeah, he never went flying, or he went other. He either went flying or went outside under the vehicle. I'm stumbling, friends. There's just, my opinion is I'll wait to pass judgment. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty. But I want to wait and see what the state has before making any determinations, as we all should. As we all should. I don't know what happened, but whatever it wasn't what the prosecution is alleging. And that is the way I'm leaning. That's the way I'm leaning. Agreed, Chopper. We're just trying to make sense out of what we have so far. Yeah, we're doing what we do at the think tank. We mull over things. We talk about things. It's a think tank. Throw this stuff up and let's talk about it. Because there is two sides to this story. That I can guarantee. That I can guarantee. So yeah, the trial is on March 12th. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty. I just want to make sure everyone waits to hear both sides before jumping the gun. Oh, there's so much paperwork for us to review, friend. Yeah, that's right. There is no gun to jump. Nothing is clear either way. That's because the state don't relax their evidence right away. There. 3 sides to every story, yours, mine, and the truth. Yes. Yeah, they always hold things close to the vest. But why aren't they sharing their discovery? I do have a bit of a problem with that. I don't understand that. And I also want to know if they're being on the up and up, why are the feds watching them now? I got a couple questions still. The state is holding most of all evidence, not letting defense have access to it. This is where, yeah, this is where the problem is. Yes, yeah, we're here to chit chat, guys. We're not here to convict anybody. We're the think tank. We're not the conviction palace. All evidence should have been turned over to the defense by now. And they're saying that it hasn't. They're saying we want that information. And if I understand what we just went through, the defense doesn't want to hand over all of their information. So things are going to go sideways. They have a time limit to pass over all evidence against the client. The defense has to have their state's evidence to be. That's it. That's what the fight is about right now, Chopper. That is what's going on. Yeah, that's the thing. They still don't have access though, and the trial is right around the corner. I usually think everyone is guilty, but this gives me pause. Yeah, I'm having a hard time with this one. I really am. And I'm similar to you, Sean. Just look at Sandra Birchmore case to see how dodgy LE can be. So yeah, we're not saying that this is fact. What we're saying, we're all giving personal opinions or thoughts, which is why we're here. That's exactly why we're here. This is where the courts overreach. They determine what they believe is relevant. We're going to have to wait and see, but if they're withholding evidence, that's a good way for an appeal to be made. And that's what they're after. This here that we went through, friend, was the memorandum to the defense asking for phone records. They don't want to give up phone records. They're saying that the defense does not need it. So it's a problem. It's causing a problem. She's not going to be found guilty, in my opinion. I don't know that she's guilty. I have to say that. I don't know if she's guilty or not. But let me tell you, holy wow, there's a lot of questions at this point. It's not smooth sailing. They need to follow the rules too. If they are withholding stuff, like the defense is alleging, then yeah, this is a problem, especially this close to trial. So I did not expect this to be a stream as long as it was. I knew it was going to be a long one, but guys, I have to thank you for sticking it out with me. So much, right? Okay, guys, so what I am going to do is call this live. I'm still thinking about what I still want to do. It's not going to be a fast one, but there's 3 cases, separate searches going on for some people in Colorado, some men that have not come back from the mountains, I guess you would say. I want to look into it. So, guys, thank you very, very much. I appreciate you. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Bye.